Have you ever scrolled on your preferred streaming service and saw some really eye-catching cover art? So eye-catching that you watch its eye-catching trailer, which is so interesting that you end up putting on the movie, only to contemplate all your life decisions leading up to that moment because the movie is so god-awfully bad. Well, I just watched Knowing, starring Nicolas Cage, and oh my god, what a waste of time. So this happened to me a couple days ago, and I turned on the movie, and it was actually pretty good for the first few minutes. And today I was thinking, well, why not pick it up again? And I was so disappointed. I thought it looked really cool because it was kind of like the Da Vinci Code vibe with a middle-aged man with a Jimmy Lee hairline just explaining to you how much he loves numbers and religion. But that was so far from what I witnessed. So let me walk you through this movie. This movie starts in the 50s with a girl hearing whispers in her head and writing down a bunch of numbers that go into her school's time capsule. Now, she wasn't able to finish writing down all these numbers, so she scratches the last few into the school's janitorial closet. Like, okay, relax. Why couldn't she just find another pencil and write it down on a different piece of paper? Okay, well, that's the background of the story. Very interesting. Honestly, pretty catchy. Like, I was in it for this. Anyway, 50 years later, Nicolas Cage is a depressed professor at MIT. When we first meet him, he's teaching a class about how hot the sun is and how depressed he is because his wife just died. He also has this one really irrelevant colleague who has maybe the most unfunny lines in the whole movie.
Do you remember Kim's little sister? PhDs. And she thinks that you're intriguing, which I thought was code for gay, but apparently not.
It was almost unbearable to watch these two interact together because it was just such cringe content. Like, it was so bad. So because this colleague really wants Nick to buy him some coffee.
This is my esteemed colleague in astrophysics owes me a latte. Gay.
He misses the beginning of the time capsule's opening at his son's elementary school. The same time capsule from 50 years ago. So at this time capsule opening, the son opens up his present, which is the piece of paper that little girl wrote all those numbers on 50 years ago. As Nicolas Cage's son reads these numbers, his hearing aid starts malfunctioning. He hears whispers and sees this mysterious figure in the background. Also, this little boy, Caleb, has such a weird Instagram presence. All his comments under this actor's Instagram are just Caleb. Like, what? Anyway, this kid ends up bringing home this piece of paper, and Nick Cage ends up seeing it because he has a crippling alcohol addiction and drops his whiskey all over it. Now, as Nick Cage reads the numbers that the whiskey circles, he sees 9/11? 9/11. Of course. At this point, I was like, bro, what is this movie even about? Like, what's the point of this movie? Does it have to do, like, with terror attacks and stuff? Like, what even is going on? Like, what is this? So now that Nick Cage sees 9/11, he's really enticed. So now Nick goes through all the numbers on this list, and they show the exact date and location for every mass casualty event in the US over the last 50 years, and predicts 3 more coming in the next few weeks. So Nick's like, who wrote this, right? So he wants to find the little girl who wrote this. To do this, he ends up finding the teacher who taught that class that she was in. And now this teacher is super old, so she can't remember anything. So it was pretty much just like a waste of 3 minutes of screen time. So after all that, Nick goes home and finds the report of this girl's death. The one who like wrote all the numbers and stuff, which is something he could have done as soon as he got this piece of paper with the numbers on it, because it had her name on it. So as he's reading about this girl, the writers thought it was a great time to make this horrible and pretty jarring introduction to Nicolas Cage's sister.
Hey, stranger.
And expose some backstory about his issues with his pastor dad.
I get that you don't like being the son of a pastor.
I am the son of a pastor.
That's fine. You're still his son. Can't you let it go?
Can't he?
Like, why are they including this plot line? Where is this going? I'll get back to that in like a little bit. The only other important line in this conversation with his sister was about how hot it was getting and how the weather was. But the line was so insignificant that I didn't really think about it until the end of the movie. And I'll get to that sentence significance in a little bit too. So after his sister and him talk, He tells his sister basically shove off, and he starts watching the news because the next calamity was supposed to happen in the next 24 hours with 81 deaths. So as usual, while he's watching the news, he drinks and passes out, which is like kind of a cop-out in my opinion for passing time. But he wakes up to a call from his son. Alas, this amazing father forgot to pick up his son from school. So he rushes out and gets stuck in traffic. So while he's stuck in traffic, he's kind of scared that the event that has like 81 deaths and everything is what's causing this traffic jam. So homie gets out of the car to check out this traffic, and the movie out of nowhere just turns into Final Destination. A plane falls out of the sky, and we graphically watch 81 people burn to death. Dog, what? I sat down to watch a Nicolas Cage movie, bro. I just wanted to watch some National Treasure or something. At this point, I was just hoping that this was the weirdest plot point in the movie. So we're there on the road, watching 81 people burn to death. And then it just cuts to him just like walking home and being frazzled. Just like sitting down. Like, what, bro? What are you doing? And like, he's okay enough to call his like colleague, the irrelevant colleague, and he tells this colleague all about the numbers and the crazy plane incident. Nick, please go to sleep. So the colleague comes over, they go over all the numbers, and they drink the same bottle of like whiskey or whatever this is, which on a side note should probably be empty by now by the way he's like filling up these glasses. Like, it's crazy. Like, why are you doing this, bro? Anyway, the friend, the colleague tells him to stop looking into these numbers. He's like, you're crazy.
Right now, my scientific mind is telling me to have nothing more to do with this.
And that's pretty much the last time we see this character, this irrelevant friend. Why was he a character? Like, actually, why? He existed for 2 scenes, and both scenes would have been perfectly fine without him. Nothing went wrong because he was late to the sun's time capsule opening thing, and nothing happened during this conversation either. His character was a mistake. So while Papa's getting sloshed downstairs with this homie,
So Nicolas Cage here is a little bit up. He had a bit too much to drink.
little Caleb is hanging out with a grown man in his room. Pretty weird. And this was the same guy that was like eerily watching him during the time capsule event. Nick, bro, help this poor child. Like, why are you leaving him alone all the time? So this strange, creepy man shows Caleb a vision, which scares him to death. He's horrified because it's horrifying. Like, don't show this to a little kid, bro. What's he gonna do? Like, come on, bro. And then finally, Nick Cage ends up chasing this guy out of the house after he sees him leaving. But Nick is pretty useless because he was drinking, bro. Like, what are you doing? So flash forward to the next day. Nick tracks down this girl's address, right? The girl who wrote the numbers. So he goes to this address only to find the daughter and the granddaughter of this lady. Now, the daughter and the granddaughter are both played by the same actors who played the young and old versions of the lady who wrote the numbers. I'm fine with it. I'll let it go. I hate on a lot, but I'll let this one go. So Nick Cage does what any normal dude does and follows this mother and child to a museum trip. And while they're at the museum, he makes Caleb become friends with this little girl as he creeps on the mom, Diana. So Nick ends up coercing this family to have lunch with him and totally skips the small talk because he starts rattling off all this stuff about your mom knows everything. She knows when all these events are going to happen, which obviously gets Diana weirded out and pretty tight because 1, she was stalked by this like strange man, and 2, because he forcefully grabs her arm, and C, because he like followed her to her car. Like, homie, it's not that deep. There were so many different ways to like approach her, and you did the absolute worst way possible. Like, why? He should have been like arrested on the spot for that stuff. Like, homie, you're disgusting. But of course, he doesn't care about this poor lady he just harassed and all the trauma she's gonna have to pay for. He's gotta read the numbers. So while he's reading these numbers, he figures out the location of the next catastrophe. He sees that it's gonna happen in New York. So he calls the NYPD and he's like, yo, do something. But like, what are they gonna do? Like, what, bro?
So something bad's gonna happen on this day. Hello.
So now that the NYPD probably aren't going to do anything, he wants to go to New York and check it out. So he drops Caleb off at the sister's house and drives from Boston to New York to see the second calamity. At this point, I think like homie just enjoys watching death because what's he going to do, bro? He saw what happened with this plane. Like, how is he thinking that he's gonna like prevent something like this? He knows he can't stop it. Also, what's this color grading, bro? It happens throughout the movie, but this is definitely the worst shot of it. I get that this era of movies really like that dramatic pop of color in their shots, but this just kind of looks gross. It tastes like pennies and it looks like an iPod Nano filter, bro. Like, please stop. So now Nicky's in New York and he pulls up to the cops and he's like, yo, why didn't you do anything with my crazy panic-driven phone call yesterday where I told you something's gonna happen? And then he just like runs away, like instantly. He doesn't wait for anything. You just cannot make up this stuff. Like, what?
Why are you running? Why are you running?
So Nick ends up running into the subway and sees a cracked out Kendall Roy and starts chasing him. And I guess he thinks he's like the reason there's gonna be another like catastrophe or something, but why? It's just some like cracked out dude, bro. Why are you chasing this random man? Like, poor guy. This dude did nothing. So he chases him through all these cars, through all these trains, and he looks super sus doing this. So then the cops start rightfully chasing Nick Cage because he looks super sus, but don't get him in time because he ends up falling on some other random lady. Like, dude, get your
nasty, ugly looking, grabby, grimy, slimy looking, goofy, smelly, rotten, grabby, grimy, slimy, stinky booty hands
off this random Indian lady, bro. This is Desi girl. This is a hate crime, I swear to God. So now that he's on top of this lady, the cops pull up finally, and one pulls out a gun. And if this isn't the like most chill reaction to a gun being pulled on you, I don't even know what is.
Transit police, I'm asking you to stop.
That's
So amidst all this panic, Nick's like, yo, arrest this guy, this random cracked out dude who did nothing wrong, was just like randomly chased for no reason. And while that's all going on, Nick is somehow the only person to see this other train coming out of nowhere, and it's hurtling right towards them. You can guess what happens next. Blood, gore, screaming. Boy, get your hands off her. Come on, if you don't get those grubby dub. And this scene is endless carnage for like 50 seconds. It's crazy. 50 seconds of just unnecessary, over-the-top, gross carnage that destroys a chunk of New York City, but obviously leaves Mr. Cage unscathed. Nice. Honestly, I did like the crazy carnage, though. Like, it is weird for this movie, but it is fun to watch. Nice one, Nicky boy. I'm glad you thought this was a great concept for this movie. Okay, yeah, it's almost done, right? It's only halfway through? What? How can this go any longer? So after another minute, he lets go of this poor Desi girl. Like, what did she do to deserve this weird man to hold her for like minutes long? And like, he's holding her 40 seconds longer than the impact of this train. Like, let go, bro. So after this crazy demolition, what else can this movie do but fade to black? So while we're here, just you and me in this fade to black, please like, comment, and subscribe because I want to make more videos, but I'm unsure if anyone's actually watching them. So thank you. So after that ludicrous scene, Nick teleports home with his son, and guess who's on the doorstep? None other than the lady Diana and her kid that they scared at the museum. How did they get his address? How do they know when he was going to come home? How are they just in this Boston frigid, like autumn weather with no jacket on? Like what? I don't even want to know at this point. I'm just in it for the ride. So Diana comes clean that she actually knew all about the numbers that he was talking about, and that her mom used to always tell her that she's gonna die on the last event on that number sheet.
You said October 19th? My mother used to talk about that day all the time. She said it was the day I was gonna die.
So why didn't she mention this earlier, you may ask? This was her justification.
We all die in the end.
Great stuff here, folks. Great stuff. So on this drive to this unknown location, which we soon find out to be Diana's wacko mom's trailer in the middle of the woods, like, okay, we get some much needed backstory on Nick Cage's wife and how she died in a fire.
Last year, my wife was on a business trip to Phoenix a few days before my birthday, and fire started in her hotel.
Another date that was on this list of numbers. Now, I get that having a significant other or like a parent dying in a movie is an easy way to establish trauma and like backstory and stuff, but connecting it to the number list doesn't make a lot of sense to me just because the other like events on that list were crazy mass casualties, and this was like a house fire. Comparing this random fire to 9/11 is just kind of crazy to me. So finally, after this crazy long mundane car ride and monologue and everything, the squad reaches the mobile home and find out that actually everybody on Earth is gonna die in the last event event on this number list, not just Diana. So as Nick and Diana learn this, they hear honking from outside. And they run out to find the creepy guy from the time capsule event and the guy who was creeping on Caleb right outside with these kids. So our hero, Nicolas Cage, chases him into the woods. And the creepy man, get this, flashbangs Nick Cage with his mouth. What? Bro, what am I even watching? What is this movie? At this point, I'm like, I've sunk so much time into this movie. Please let it have at least like an interesting ending, right? What is even going on? So after all this craziness, squad goals make it back to the house and they hug it out because they're like, we're all gonna die, extinction. What else are we gonna do? Where are they gonna go from here? The next day, Nick Cage runs to MIT in a bout of eureka. Remember when I said the only other important line in this conversation with his sister was about how hot it was getting and how the weather was? But the line was so insignificant that I didn't really think about it until the end of the movie. Now that line is significant. He realizes that the reason it's so hot outside and why the weather's so hot and everything is because the sun is gonna burn the earth and the earth is gonna evaporate in the next few days. And he was the only person to figure this out. Anyway, now I hate to do this twice to you guys, but remember when I said, as he's reading about this girl, the writers thought it was a great time to make this horrible and pretty jarring introduction to Nicolas Cage's sister and expose some backstory about his issues with his pastor dad. Like, why are they including this plotline? Where is this going? Now is that bit. So Nicky Boy thought it would be a great time to reconnect with his dad because, well, better late than after the world explodes, I guess. I don't know. So he warns his dad about the impending doom and tells him to get undercover just in case the sun only scorches the top layer of the earth. But Nick Cage Sr. gives the most annoying answer possible.
I appreciate your concern, but if it's my time, it's my time. I'm ready whenever the good Lord calls me. Are you?
And then hangs up. Honestly, good for him, because if Nick Cage was my son, I'd try to end our relationship on bad terms as well. Sad that those might be the last words that he hears from his dad. Nick Cage goes upstairs to check on his own son, only to find him scratching numbers into his desk, just like the little girl from the beginning. Caleb, you genius. Nick remembers that the girl scratched those numbers into the janitor's door. So he's like, I gotta find that door. Now, he thinks that the numbers that are on this door are the location of a safe place to avoid this mass extinction event. So he obviously wants to find it to save himself and his kid. Now, good for Nick, right? He made the right conclusion that this door might have the answers to solve this catastrophe. But couldn't he have just given Caleb a pencil and paper and made him just finish the number sequence? Like, homie didn't have to drive all the way to the school, find the old door in some shed, heat it up, sand it down, and plug the numbers into his GPS. I'm sure it would have taken like 5 minutes for this kid to finish writing down all the numbers on a piece of paper with a pencil. So anyway, while Nick is doing the most, Diana takes it upon herself to freak out, think Nick is going crazy, even though the circumstances are literally already crazy. And she kidnaps Caleb, the son. She just drives off with the kids for no reason except that she's panicking. Parenting at its best. So Diana's driving and driving, but she runs out of gas. So while she's paying for it, my boy Caleb has the smarts to call his dad and let him know where he is. And he's like,
yo, I've been kidnapped by this crazy lady.
So he gives enough information to Nick, but then Diana pulls up, snatches the phone, starts foaming at the mouth and like babbling nonsense. Well, Nick's just trying to save these kids. For once, Nick Cage is in the right, bro. Let him have it. All Nick wants to do is bring them to the location written on the door, but she just does not want to do this. So while she's yelling, she looks back and sees the Human Torch bunker kids, bro. Your kids are gone. Dude, honestly good. I think at this point in the movie, I trust this creepy dude over this infuriating mother. A moderately high-speed chase ensues where Diana goes a little bit over the speed limit to try to catch this dude that just boomed her kids. Doesn't feel too good. Does it, Diana? Go! Go! Yes! Yes! Yeah! Oh. Well, rest in peace, Diana. I guess it's left to Nick Cage to find these kids. She served nothing to the plot. May she rest easy. So Nick's driving, trying to find these kids, and sees a dead Diana. So now he figures that his best bet is probably just to go to these coordinates and see if the kids were taken there as well. And it turns out that the coordinates were for Diana's mom's mobile home from before. So he makes it to the mobile home and sees our homie, Mr. Malfoy or whatever, creeping around. So armed and dangerous, Nick Cage's like swinging around this gun at Draco Malfoy.
Where's Caleb? I want my son! I want my son! Now!
But our homies, Caleb and the little girl, who we still don't know her name really, pull up holding bunnies? Interesting. And just then we see 3 more homies pull up out of nowhere. Nick's like,
Who are you?
and they reply by showing their giant alien spaceship. Okay. The blonde homies shed their skin to show their true forms. Translucent people. So Nick's staring at the spaceship, at these translucent aliens, and he realizes that he's not going to be able to accompany his kids on this spaceship. And that this spaceship will be the start of a new world. And that these 2 kids will be the start of a new Earth. The oldest trope in modern history. And the sponsor of today's video, Adam and Eve. Nah, I'm just playing. But I feel like this is the weirdest, most unfulfilling ending to this movie. Like, how do they use this doomsday type movie and turn it into a religious metaphor using aliens? Like, what, bro? Like, kind of cool. But why? Why, bro? And with the emotional range of like a lizard, Nick Cage watches his kid get beamed up into his spaceship, the coolest thing he's probably ever seen, while also parting with his child. Not even a tear, bro. Nothing. What? And then as the camera zooms out, we also see a bunch of other spaceships leaving Earth. Does that mean a bunch of kids have been taken by aliens? Like, I thought this whole plot was surrounded by this one number event and this one girl and this one dude, and they've had all these prophecies and stuff. Like, are they not Adam and Eve? Are they just like a bunch of Adam and Eves on Earth and they're just gonna all repopulate new planets and stuff? Like, why were there so many spaceships if they just had to pick these 2 kids up? This like spaceship sequence leaves me with way more questions than I had like 30 seconds ago, so I'm just gonna forget this happened. Finally, we end the scene by watching Nick Cage pass out on the ground from what looks like a really bad tummy ache.
Oh, Nicky baby ain't a bad man. Oh, little baby Nicolas Cage. You want some Tums? You want some Pepsi?
Cry baby, get up. What are you doing, bro? And somehow there's still enough time on this doomsday clock for him to wake up, take the car, drive through the city with like crazy ease, just like maneuvering around people, while the entire world is pretty much ransacking every possible thing. And while he's like whipping around, he gets like a good look at his homie, who had no purpose in this plot, the one irrelevant coworker, colleague guy. And how did he cross that bridge, bro? Like, there's no way. There's no way he can cross this bridge. There's no way. By some crazy means, he makes it to his familial home and is greeted by his sister, who I forgot was in this movie. The most insane interaction happens right now that made me gasp, gape, and throw up a little bit in my mouth when I first watched this.
Where's Caleb?
Caleb's safe.
Dog, what? That's it? If it was the end of the world and that was the amount of care my aunt had for me, that her questions are quelled by a sly Nick Cage smirk and a disingenuous
Caleb's safe.
I would literally end the world before the sun could. Like, bro, come on. Anyway, Nicolas Cage makes it inside, hugs his family, and gets evaporated with everyone else in the world. This is probably my favorite part of the movie because it's so satisfying to know that these characters don't exist anymore. The blinding light of the sun exploding transitions to Caleb and this girl, whatever her name is, in some potato sacks in this brand new world with an ungodly amount of pollen. I'm guessing the significance of the bunnies was like Easter and resurrection and stuff. But these Christian metaphors are just like too on the nose that it's not enjoyable anymore. The movie closes as we watch these 2 kids sprint towards this green screen tree of knowledge as we celebrate the best ism. Creationism. Let's go. Let's go. Wow. I really spent 2 hours watching this movie. If you made it through this rant, I'm happy that one other person suffered with me. Let's call this trauma bonding. All I gotta say is whoever made the trailer of this movie needs a raise because they genuinely convinced me to lose hours of my life. Well, if you enjoyed this video, thank you for watching. Ta-ta!